Ready graphics? Ready theme? Cue graphics.
Good evening. For your information tonight.
We found out at some point, I can't remember when, that Murphy was, in a way like the women on the Golden Girls, surprisingly appealing to kids. Because in some ways she behaved like an impulsive, bratty kid. But she was a kid who had power and confidence.
Hi, I'm Jessie Mullins.
Hi, I'm Lauren Milberger, and welcome to an interview episode
of the
Murphy Brown podcast, which are some of our favorites.
I mean, as fans, they're our favorites because we get to talk to the brilliant minds behind Murphy Brown.
Yeah.
So we do talk about a few things. We want to make sure that everybody knows the references we're making in this.
Yeah, we realized we started making some references when we were talking to Stephen Peterman, and we just want to be sure that it's clear in case you aren't listening to all the episodes.
I mean, we hope that you are.
Yes.
But in case you aren't, or we haven't mentioned these things for a few episodes, we don't assume you're keeping a spreadsheet of everything we say.
Exactly.
So when we talk about Corby is Corby Siamis, writer and producer of Murphy Brown. And as we have been learning from the writers, from said writer's room, Diane English's right hand.
Yes.
And leader of the writer.
And then at one point, Stephen mentions Bev Dixon, who was Candice Bergen's dialogue coach. And then if you're unaware, the episode that Stephen and his writing partner, Gary, who eventually went on to executive produce the series, which we'll talk about their credits when you get into the interview. Yes. The episode that they won the Emmy for was Jingle Hell, Jingle All the Way, which is the third season Christmas episode.
Yes.
So we really enjoyed this interview.
It's a lot of fun. It was so much fun that it's actually going to be 2 parts.
Yeah, so we're going to have part 1 now, and then we will see you next week for part 2.
Yes.
Hope
Enjoy.
Enjoy. Bye. Corby made me promise that I show you something.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Should we just start off?
Yeah, let's start with the good stuff.
And then we'll do an intro later. We'll introduce you later.
All right. Anytime you start with Corby is fine with me.
We agree.
We agree. I don't know if you listen to the show, and it's okay if you don't.
I wanted to be a virgin when I came to you.
That's how we like it. Just like Rocky Horror Picture Show.
So I had a Murphy Brown scrapbook when I was 12.
Oh, my God.
Through, 16.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday. Through yesterday.
And I wrote a lot of letters to you guys.
Oh, that's very dear.
And to Diane mostly, and then to you and Gary when you took over. And you wrote me back twice?
Oh, my God. Good for us.
It's like very impressive work.
My parents are moving, so I've been going through a lot of my old stuff, and I found a lot of my scrapbooks, and then I found these. These fell out.
Oh, wow.
Including 2 letters from Diane's assistant telling her to leave me alone. No, I'm just kidding.
She got the letters. She'll get back to you someday.
So I thought I would just quickly read them to you.
Hearing my own words read back to me, the only thing better would be me reading it myself.
Yes.
Well, some of them crack me up because there's a couple of underlines. Okay, so this is from January 5th, 1993.
Oh, my God.
I appreciate that they're typed out. It's fantastic.
I don't know.
Well, my handwriting's horrible, so that's why.
No, I am dyslexic. My handwriting is horrible as well. So, dear Ms. Milberger, as a young girl, I signed everything Ms. because,
Sure.
Thank you for your letter concerning Jay Thomas.
Oh.
There's a running theme here. Having written 2 of the Jerry Gold episodes ourselves, Gary and I love the character as much as you do. But as long as he's appearing immediately after us as another character, the general feeling is it would be too confusing to our audience to bring him back. Again, I'm 14.
Right.
And since Diane English...
But I'm treating you like an adult.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
it.
Yeah. No, you are. And since Diane English gave us our first break, we have to hope that Jay's new show will run a long time. At least you'll be able to enjoy him in that. Thanks again for watching. Sincerely, Stephen Peterman, executive producer, Murphy Brown.
What a lovely man that is. And then I wrote you a second letter, probably saying, "Leave me alone."
You wrote me a second letter. I do not remember how often I wrote you guys. I'm sorry. I also had forgotten reading this that apparently I had a Murphy Brown newsletter because there was no fan club.
Oh, wow.
And I started it myself. Okay. So it's like I'm opening my diary.
Mm-hmm.
March 19th, 1993. Dear Lauren, we've become familiar.
Yeah.
This is my favorite part. We have underline.
received the newsletters you sent, and apologize for not getting back to you sooner. But sometimes things get a little hectic around here, and we fall behind. Tonight we're filming our final episode of the season, and then we're all heading off for a much-deserved rest. We think the season finale is a terrific show and look forward to your reaction when you see it in May. Thanks again for your support and the newsletter. Sincerely, Steve Peterman.
Yeah. This is,
Executive producer Murphy Brown.
I'm like one step away from the Me Too movement here, right? Oh my, thank God there was a 3,000-mile difference.
So thank you.
Oh, that's great.
I thought they were going to be more embarrassing when I found them, but reading them more than once, I'm like,
No.
okay, they're very
lovely.
sweet. The underline cracks me up though, because God, how many times did I write you guys?
Oh, but I have to tell you, when you're, and Corby may have talked about this, some of the other guys may have talked about this, when you're doing a show, you're in this kind of bubble where all you do is drive to work all day, come home, say hello to your family again. My son in 1993 was a year and a half, 2 years old. And I wasn't seeing him much at all. And you kind of forget most of the time that the impact the show is having outside. Every once in a while, and the secretaries didn't pass on a lot of fan mail and stuff to us, and frankly, the writing staff didn't get that much. So it was nice to get that stuff. It was nice to have that reminder that the show was appealing to, and not only that, but to know that kids were enjoying the show. We found out at some point, I can't remember when, that Murphy was in a way like the women on the Golden Girls, surprisingly appealing to kids, because in some ways she behaved like an impulsive, bratty kid, but she was a kid who had power and confidence, and I think that appealed to kids. But it was always wonderful for us to know that a show that was obviously written for the most sophisticated audience we could get on network TV had an audience of kids who enjoyed the show too. Smart kids too, like you.
Well, I think it made us smart.
I was saying on one of I think it was the last episode we recorded, which has not aired yet, that as a very, how do I say, forceful personality and a young female, I spent a lot of my childhood dealing with the concept of being bossy.
Yeah.
And that kind of gender dynamic and discouragement. However, I was raised in what my family called a matriarchal society, and I was encouraged to be that, and I watched everything my mother watched. So for me, watching someone like Murphy during those formative years completely informed how I approached workplace dynamics, how I didn't apologize for having an opinion. I had to learn how to have a graceful opinion, as we're going to talk about soon. I think the next one we record is off the job experience.
Yeah.
And learning that lesson of there's a point when maybe your opinion could be packaged differently, but it was very encouraging as a young girl to not be constantly told to shut up and be polite.
This is absolutely, and two things that this brings to mind, what you're saying. The first is, I remember early on, we all thought the show, I remember seeing the pilot and knowing when we were up for this job, we got to get on this show. This show is just head and shoulders above everything else we're seeing. It was so smart, and Murphy, as you said, was such an amazing character, such a powerful character, and Candace in the role and all of that, we thought this show's going to be a success, but much of the first year, it was a middling success. It was in the 40s of, I think at that time there were like 100 and some shows on the air. It was in the middle of the pack. It wasn't until the end of the year, and I think Emmy Award stuff, and journalists obviously started liking the show and pumping the show. So the show was we didn't know it was going to become what it became. And the second thing was we were hearing, where is it doing well? Where isn't it doing well? England, for example, by and large, we were told the British did not care for this woman. because of exactly the reasons you're talking about. Australians loved her.
Yep.
And I remember early on in talking about her in the writer's room and trying to figure out, how do we write her? How do we write her so that she is funny and likable? And so what we really began to see was you write her like a man. You write her like a man wearing a dress, because in her mind, she is the equal to or the superior to any man she's in the room with. And that was a lot of the way we approached her.
Yeah, what's the quote that Diane said about?
Oh, Mike Wallace in a dress.
Yep.
Exactly.
So since we didn't really get to introduce you, Stephen, I wanted to introduce you with the email that you originally sent us with your credits, because it cracked me up that you wanted to introduce yourself with your credits to us.
I'm still insecure. I was an actor too, okay?
Artist man, we're all the worst critics.
Which we definitely want to talk about, because we also write, and so I'm fascinated with the transition of going from being an actor to being a writer. But here we go. So story editor, 1988 to 89, producer, 1989 to 90, supervising producer, 1990 to 91 and 91 to 92, and executive producer, 92 to 93 and 93 to 94.
A meteoric rise.
It's an impressive rise.
You have to understand, Gary and I, and we could talk about this. Gary and I were the baby writers on staff when we got there in terms of experience, but we were probably the oldest guys in the room too, because both of us had careers as actors and come to this very late. I mean, so late that if we had known what the odds were, the likelihood, it was a stupid thing to try to do. So, I mean, part of that was I am still somewhat surprised by the longevity and of my career and by the things I've been lucky enough to be involved in.
Well, I think there's a certain intrinsic quality that all actors have of we are trained to seek approval and validation. And we're always waiting. We're the product and hoping to be chosen. So I think that's something that's hard to shake, even when you become the creator.
And even when you are successful, a lot of actors talk about imposter syndrome, right?
Yes. Took me a long time to get past I'm an actor playing a writer on a show. And so far, so good. But every time Gary and I started a script, and poor Gary, when you talk to him, and I know I hope you'll get the chance. I know he is the sweetest. I've always called Gary the hardest working saint in show business. He is an incredibly sweet man, and he had to deal with all of my insecurities. And every time we started a script, it was like, this is the one. This is the one where it all comes down. This is the one where they all find out, and we are escorted off the lot. So. It took me a long time to get past that.
Well, I think something that's a credit that when we were looking over your guys' credits as writers in particular on the show, something that stands out to me in your episodes is this character-based work, which granted is something Diane just put into the writer's room in general, but we were just having a conversation passing the time about being in college and taking Shakespeare in the English department versus Shakespeare in the theater department. And that idea of coming at it from an actor's perspective, from an objective and an internal need perspective, which always stands out to me, particularly in your scripts.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. I was we should have done this with Norm, but
now you compliment me.
Yes, now you complimenting. I mean, here are just some examples of my favorite episodes. Obviously, I love your Jerry Gold episodes. That's a given. Lovesick, Gold Rush is absolutely my favorite. Horseplay. Well, Every Time It Rains, You Get Wet is one of my favorites. I think it's one of Murphy's best monologues when she comes in after her day and just loads on Eldon. But exactly, they're character driven and also are, I think, important to the run of the show. Something that I was reminded of is that your episode, Come Out, Wherever You Are, which you just mentioned, is really the only episode that has a gay character in it. Mm-hmm. Was that something that you guys in the writer's room really sort of talked about in the sense, or was just a topic that you wanted to go over?
Well, I'm not speaking out of school now, God knows. Gary is a wonderful gay man. Gary and I met doing a play down in San Diego in 1982. But when we first got on staff, this is a long time ago, obviously, we were driving to work, or we had talked. We didn't drive to work together, but we had talked the night before. We're going in the first day. We're going to meet everybody. We're very excited about it. We were tremendously excited about getting this job. And Gary said, look, I don't know these people yet, and I'm not comfortable yet letting people know I'm gay. And I was like, look, it's your call. Obviously, I'm not going to say anything. He's gay. I have a gay partner. I wasn't going to say anything, and I said, "Fine, it's your call. You let everybody know, and when you're ready." And we sat around the table with Diane and Corby on the first day, and everybody's talking a little bit, and then Diane took us all to lunch in the executive dining room, and she said, "Let's go around the table. Everybody talk a little bit about themselves." I can't remember. I said something about. It may have been Gary was the first. I think as we went around the table, Russ and Norman, Tom spoke, and Corby, and then Gary. And Gary was at that point, after 4 hours with everyone, so in love with the room and with being there that the first thing out of his mouth was, "I'm Gary. I'm the gay one." And everybody else said, "Yeah, we'd heard one of you was gay. But by now, we all figured it was Steve." Another thing that was very important to us, and it's interesting you talk about come out. When most of the time when you do a sitcom, no matter how good the episode is, the best you're going to get from people the next day is, "I saw the episode last night. It was cute." That's usually what you get. Whenever we could write an episode that tackled something a little bit more, that was always so much fun to us. When Gary and I started writing together and got our first job, it was right in the middle of the first wave of the AIDS crisis. This is a very long answer to your question, but I think it's important as to the quality of who we were as a writing team, and who, as a matter of fact, it appears we're now going to be if things work out and we all go back and do some more episodes of Murphy. But Gary obviously had a lot of friends who were ill. Gary and his partner had been together for a long time. They were, fortunately for the two of them, had been monogamous for a long time. But nobody knew exactly what caused this and where it came from and blah. And so nobody knew if they were exempted or not. But that didn't matter to Gary. Gary would, on our first job, which was a kids' little cable sitcom, Gary would often go to the hospital before work. He would sometimes, if we had a long enough lunch break, he would go to the hospital at lunch. He'd visit friends of his who were dying. He would come back to the office. He would sit on the couch. He would cry for 10 minutes. I would hug him, and then we'd go to work. And in 20 minutes, we'd be laughing about something. And it was a catharsis for Gary, and it was a wonderful example of how you can compartmentalize when you have to. But we got a chance to do that episode because of something. The best episodes, everybody says, they're always the things that come out of real life. Peter Tolan, wonderful writer, who has since also, again, not out of school, Peter has come out as gay. At that time, I don't know if Peter knew he was gay, but at that time, Peter was, I think, married. And as far as everybody knew, Peter was a married guy who had done musicals in school and was extremely funny. Peter came in having had a dream the night before about our CBS network liaison guy, a guy named Bill. Bill was probably gay. Bill was very cute. And Bill was often on the set. And Tolan came in and said, I had the funniest dream last night, this weird dream that Bill and I were in the mall on the Washington Capitol Mall, and we were swimming and giggling and laughing, and I think he may have used the word frolicking. I know we used it. I think he might have used it, but he told this dream and he said, that's the weirdest dream. And Gary and I looked at each other and was like, Jesus Christ, Peter, that is a homoerotic dream. And he was like, no, it isn't. It's just this crazy dream. And we talked about it, the two of us, and we went to Peter and we said, we think there's an episode in this. Do you mind if we take your dream and use it? And he said, I don't care. I don't know. I don't know what you see in it or something like that. But he graciously said, no, you guys have an idea. Go ahead, run with it. So we came up with this thing, and it was so much fun for us, and obviously so much fun for Gary to be able to explore the stereotypes of people and their impressions. Miles' fear that he might be gay. And him going to everybody on staff and talking about what does it mean if I am, and do you think I am, and all of that stuff, and the reflections that it caused all the male guys on staff to have, and the different reactions of the women on staff. It was also, I think, maybe the first episode in which we had a full written scene in which Murphy did not appear. The scene where Miles goes to Phil's bar with the network guy and has this conversation with him. A wonderful actor, who we used in a number of things, and a terrific actor, whose name escapes me now. I'm afraid I'll get it, but you guys can look it up. But that was the first scene that Murphy wasn't in, and and it was a kind of a big deal to have a scene like that where she wasn't in, because so much of the show was Murphy driven, and so much of the first 4 years. And one of the reasons that Candace was so exhausted all the time was the enormous amount of work she had to do. But that episode for us, you got it. Yeah, that episode was so impactful, so wonderful to write. And then the best thing that happened was, and again, I'm sorry this goes on so long, but this episode is one of my all-time favorite things that I've ever been involved in. The day after it aired, we were in our office working on something, and we got a call from one of the assistants saying there's a guy on the phone from an AIDS hospice in Massachusetts, and he wants to talk to the guys who wrote last night's episode. So he gets on the phone with us, and he says, I just wanted you to know, and again, take this back. This is where people are dying every hour of every day, and nobody knows for sure what's going to happen. He said, I deal with people who are in terrible shape. They are angry, they're frightened, they feel alone. Last night, and Murphy was very popular, not only with the Australians, but with the gay community. Murphy had a big gay audience. There's a bar in West Hollywood called Rage that used to have viewing parties on Monday night, and it was right near Gary's house. But he said when the episode started and people realized what the episode was about, the phone line started ringing. People were calling. People saying, are you watching? You got to watch. You got to watch the show. You got to see what they're doing on Murphy Brown. And he said, people who haven't laughed in a very long time were laughing last night. And Gary and I looked at each other like, what, that wasn't, it's great when people say it's cute. And a lot of people have tough jobs and, they don't like their work. They don't like their life, whatever. They come home on. We've had people say to us, I used to look forward to Monday night because it was the first day of the week and I didn't want to be at work. And I said, tonight I get to watch Murphy Brown. And to have that kind of reaction meant more to us than anything. It's one of the things that I treasure about the career that we've been able to have. And I look forward to when you get a chance to talk to Gary about it, because after some of the things I put him through in our partnership, it was nice that was something that we did together, that he got a chance to do. It was also one of the only times that CBS, I think that episode aired on a Wednesday night, and it aired on a Wednesday night because CBS gave us a bullshit reason about, we're doing some promotional thing with blah, blah, blah. And the truth of the matter was they were uncomfortable with the episode and they wanted to bury it a little bit. So they moved it to a Wednesday night. And it got us an Emmy nomination. So that was great.
I think that's something that we as artists, that's why we're in this, is the opportunity for commentary and change. And for me personally, I'm a huge lover of genre fiction and Shakespeare and these things that are universal platforms that you can experiment with representation. And the idea of having the opportunity to put something out there that we don't see as often and represent those that are not the easiest in whatever time period. Seeing those characters then, I'm so excited for, because this show has always done that. The show has always, pushed the boundaries of what was okay or what people thought the demographics wanted to see. And I'm very excited for this reboot and this revival, because we have so much more to talk about now.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing and the big reason we wanted to do the podcast too is to sort of show how relevant the show still is. And there really is rarely an episode where we aren't able to connect something to today.
I was just saying in an email to Corby that in one of our last aired episode, I mentioned Antonin Scalia, that about we trying to saint someone who, now that they're dead, and not acknowledging the difficulties we might have had with said person. And she had mentioned, good call on that. And I said, we don't have to go far rewatching these episodes for a recent parallel. It's all of these things are still happening, and sometimes on the nose still happening.
And really the main reason was we wanted to have fun. Yeah. But we wanted to bring the show streaming or on DVD, because there seems to sometimes be this argument, the reason it's not on is because it's just dated. And it's not.
No, it's really not.
No, but I do think one of the big reasons it's not on was, from what at least I remember Diane talking to us about, was the music licensing.
No, we know the real reason.
No, we know the real reason.
Yeah. But it is interesting that you're saying that, and it's nice because it's not nice. It's sad in a way that it's relevant again. It shouldn't be, but it is. The interesting thing that we're going to be confronting when we get there, though, is that when we were doing the show, there was nobody else. Well, Norman Lear in his shows was very much. And Roseanne, to her credit, she may have been a difficult person to work with at that time, but she covered working class issues in a way that nobody else was doing. We're going to be coming on, and I know Diane talked with several of us about this when she was trying to decide, do I do this reboot or not? We're not going to be, competing with John Oliver, Trevor Noah, Samantha Bee. Every late night host has a wonderful monologue. Seth Meyers is great at it. Colbert obviously is great at it. Jimmy Kimmel has become the voice of the common man at it. So, and we're going to have to find our own way into it. And I know Diane has some ideas about that, and we've all been thinking about it. But obviously, we won't be able to comment on the day-to-day stuff because everything changes in 2 hours right now. But there are certain issues that remain in the public mind, and I think that that's part of what you're feeling, and that we're hoping we can tackle.
Oh man, we were just the next episode we're recording is Off the Job Experience, and the opening with the colonel about putting money into weaponry, based on what just unfortunately happened in Florida. I really am excited to see. And especially because if we look at the John Olivers and the late night hosts, these are day-to-day actual real-life events that sometimes can be so polarizing because people have such immediate knee-jerk personal reactions to them. I'm excited to see what fictional characters can do using a fictional story and world and representatives that might allow people to see more sides of it, because it's not directly in their face from a real moment.
Yeah, and we actually brought this up with, well, Norm brought it up, really, when we talked with Norm. And this is before any of us knew that the reboot was going to be happening, or I guess revival. I like to say the word revival.
The revival. Yeah, we're not recasting.
Yes, just to make people, not scare people. Was that, yes, there is obviously your John Olivers and your Samantha Bees, but there is something to be said about dramatizing something and the impact that it has on people, and it is a different way. Some people can look at late night hosts as being preachy. I don't agree, but some people can. Whereas when they see something in a dramatic setting, sometimes it seeps into your brain in a different way.
There's no question, but my cynical side, or my, I don't know, jaded side, says that the people who are going to watch this revival are people who liked the show. And if you liked the show, you were already in this camp. And if anything, positions have hardened in this country since that time. And I don't know, what. I don't know if minds will be changed. I don't know. I mean, the facts can change people's minds. I'm not sure if any of this can. We're certainly going to do our best. And Diane, we always used to say too that we weren't. Obviously, we were all somewhat liberal in our leanings, but we went after whoever was in power, and we held them to account. And when the Republicans were in power, we teased them, and when the Democrats were in power, we went after them. So we were equal opportunity because we were trying to make a show that was funny and entertaining. It'll be the same now. So we'll see. But I know, Gary and I had to write the episode that started off the fifth season, Murphy's response to Dan Quayle, and that I don't think changed a single mind. The people who loved the show loved the episode. People who loved Dan Quayle thought it was preachy, and some of it probably was. At the time, we were angry, and we felt we'd been pilloried unjustifiably, and so there were things in the episode now that I look at and say, well, maybe we're a little heavy on that, but
that's a good.
You do what you do.
Sorry, that's actually something I did want to bring up, because having to take over the show, let alone have to come back with this reaction to this huge media circus that happened. I sort of joke that I can't even just look at any of the coverage anymore because I have a whole scrapbook full of it. And it makes me a little nauseous. But can you talk a little bit about sort of the daunting, what you had to go through coming back, and taking over the show at the same time?
It was awful. It was a scary enough proposition to be taking over. It was a tremendous honor for Diane to pick us, because, again, we had been the babies on staff when we came in, but we had stayed there, for 4 years and 100 episodes. And Diane handing the show off was a tremendous sign of support. But then the Dan Quayle thing happens. It's Diane's final episode. It's the 100th episode. It's the birth of the baby, everything. I mean, it was a spectacular episode and wonderfully done, wonderfully written. The audience going crazy. And then Quayle does his thing. And Diane, like a protective mama bear, every time Quayle says something, or some other Rush Limbaugh or somebody says something, Diane can't help it. She says something. And I think that was the Emmy Awards where she did her thing about, well, I think we raised she'll do a better job than the Reagans. And it was like, Gary and I were sitting there, we understood it was her baby and it was being attacked, and we might have done the same thing, but we're saying to ourselves, oh my God, Diane, you're not going to be here.
Yeah, we have to deal with this.
Don't say anymore. Stop saying things, because it just built over months. And so it became like, what the hell kind of episode is going to satisfy anybody? This thing was built up so much. in the public eye. How is Murphy going to respond? And this is our first time running a show, and it's this show, and it's beloved. And then we're writing the script, and then somehow copies of the script get out, and Rush Limbaugh gets a copy of the script and is reading lines from the script. And if you want to know every writer's nightmare, it's Rush Limbaugh reading badly your stuff. So, and I mean, Gary and I are like, not almost like looking over our shoulder in the parking lot, walking to our cars at night. And then the filming of the episode, we were so new to running the show. This was an hour episode. And if we'd been smart and more experienced as executive producers, we would have done it over a 10-day period or something. But we tried to do it in a normal week. So Candace jumps into the deep end of the pool, having herself been terrified by, all this brouhaha. I mean, it's a TV show, but it's on the front page of the New York Times. So we shot the episode in one night. And I apologize to Candace whenever we see each other for having put her through that, because we were too stupid to realize what we're trying to do here is enormous. Let's break it up. But that was our learning curve as executive producers. And ultimately, I think overall, a lot of the episode holds up. And I think what I'm very proud of is our use of real life stuff in the episode, the clips of Dan Quayle on television, the real newspapers, real commentary. I'm very proud of the way we were able to incorporate that stuff into the episode. And most shows didn't have the opportunity or the reason to do it. It's something in a strange way we wound up being able to do on Hannah Montana years later. And I was thrilled about how I love when you can do that sort of meta stuff, and it doesn't pull you out of the show because the show necessitates it. And your audience knows that they're watching a show that is relevant on multiple levels. So there's a lot about that episode I like a lot. There's some of it I think was us, again, being a little preachy, but it was a terrifying thing to have to jump into. And people used to say to us, wow, you guys this is great, right? All this publicity, this must be fantastic. And we were like, just look over there. Look over there. We'll do our first couple episodes and get comfortable. But, it was just a monster moment in television and viewing parties and CBS and people doing things about the viewing parties. It was crazy.
I mean, in hindsight, of course, it's baptism by fire is great if you survive it.
Yeah.
But you don't know in the moment.
And we also then had to deal with that first season back. Now there's a baby. How much do you include the baby? And we erred on the side of putting in too much baby at first. And we had to learn the audience. They want her to be a good mom, but they don't want to deal with the baby a lot. The thing that people loved about Murphy was, Murphy against the world, and Murphy the independent woman. So ultimately, even though we had some great episodes with the baby and some really fun stuff. The whole Barry Manilow run with the baby was something Gary and I absolutely loved when we came up with. Eldon's reaction to the baby and dealing with the baby. But it took us much of that first fifth season to figure out the balance. And it wasn't really until the sixth season that we really found our footing again, I think, and recovered. In hindsight, it's interesting because Corby, and she may have told you this, Corby has a very strong feeling that no show should last more than 4 seasons, 100 episodes, right? Did she say it?
No, she didn't. No.
Oh, she used to. Oh my God, this was Corby had certain things on the board written very large. One was they did that on Mary. If they did it on Mary Tyler Moore,
that's in the book.
Allowed to do it.
We have the big. Well, let's see.
We have Anatomy of a Sitcom.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Pictures of me and Grant dressed alike in that one.
And a bio that you wrote for yourself, which we read.
Oh, right. How wonderful. Yes, I'm always happy to talk about myself.
So please follow us on social media. We are Murphy Brown Pod on all those platforms. We are also murphybrownpod.com for our website, and our email is murphybrownpod@gmail.com.
Yeah, you can leave us a voicemail telling us why you love Murphy Brown so we can maybe put it on the show, or send us a little note from your phone to murphybrownpod@gmail.com. The number, if you want to just call and leave a voicemail, is 646-450-6902. And we have the Spotify playlist, Murphy Brown Empowerment Playlist. The link is on our website if you can't find it. And listen to songs from and inspired by the TV series Murphy Brown.
We love it.
And we'll see you next week
For another edition of FYI.
the Murphy Brown Podcast.
Dan Quayle.